influence the vote right now. So do you think that the Houston Astros are a dynasty over the past whatever amount of years you want to call it, 7, 8 years? Or what would your answer be? Did you see all the options we put out there? Otherwise, I can tell you.
I heard the options, so it's like yes, no, they need one more, or cheating scandal keeps it from being a dynasty. I think when you look at it, they've been in the World Series in 17, 19, 21, and 22. They were one game away from getting back in 23. There's 2 World Series titles mixed in there. Feel how you feel about the cheating scandal. I understand on both sides of it how people feel about that. I think they're the closest we've seen to being one since the Giants, right? Like what the Giants were able to do, obviously 3 World Series titles, being able to be in that mix so often, and they had kind of the odd year thing where they would win in odd years. I don't know if people understand how hard it is to do what they just did in going to the ALCS, the championship series, 7 consecutive years. That's wild. And I think that's something that a lot of teams want to try to do. I don't think it's something that a lot of teams can emulate, even though they try their hardest. And so I think they're the closest thing we've seen since those Giants teams.
So your option is, what's your choice? Because I'm picking another title. I still need one more for me to say this is a dynasty.
I'll say yes, because I don't know if there's going to be another team for a little while that can do what they just did.
Okay. And also just small clarification as stat boy, San Francisco is even years. What was it 10, 12?
10, 12, 14.
My bad.
No, you're good.
It
you're
is.
Good.
We
Do you agree,
know.
by the way?
It is. Russ, we know.
Get out of here. Do you guys agree?
I agree they need one more. I mean, it's like the Braves when they won all those titles in a row and they only won 1 World Series. People are like, well, they were great, but they never really got it done in the big moments, right? Well, the Astros got 2, and they got to the LCS 7 years in a row. Obviously, they lost 19 in Game 7. Mm-hmm. They lost 21 to an unbelievable Braves team that was hotter than fire.
But most people aren't counting 17 as the dynasty conversation.
Why not? That's when it all started.
Because
of trash cans?
A lot of cheating going on.
Listen, if you think they're the only team that was cheating going on at that time,
I don't.
You crazy.
I don't.
They were just better at it.
Okay.
Because there was other teams they played were cheating
too.
Just as much.
Yeah, but was every team cheating? This is the steroid talk, which is a long.
I don't know. I wasn't. No. I retired because I couldn't handle the cheating.
Was every team going to those lengths, using technology and trash cans and all this shit, like the several teams that we know about were? Or was it a special group that was like, we're going to cheat more because we deserve it?
Just the teams that won got caught.
So everyone was whatever. Anyway, what's your answer? Do you think they're dynasty crats?
Yes. 100%.
100%. All right, cool.
They got one more run in them, I think. One more year. And then it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Right, Russ? Because Bregman, Tucker, a lot of these guys are, after this year, Verlander, they're all going to be free agents after one more year. So then they got one more shot at it.
Yeah, and I also think if Dusty is done, who they decide their next manager is, I think that plays an important part in that. I know there are a lot of people that don't feel like managers really impact winning. I think some feel like they can greatly impact losing. But I do think that'll play a role in like how this team responds. I think Dusty got the absolute best out of them. I think it was the perfect fit for both Dusty and for the Astros and those players who were in that room. And so I think I'm with you that they probably have one more shot at it. Like they were one game away from getting back to the World Series, right? So I don't think they're just like, this is the end. And Yordan Alvarez isn't going anywhere. Kyle Tucker isn't going anywhere. Jose Altuve has proven that he could still play at a very high level. And I don't think we saw the best of Jeremy Pena after what we saw from him last year when he was World Series MVP. So I'm with you. I think they have another shot, but I think who their next manager is, if Dusty indeed retires, I think that would say a lot about where their direction is going.
And we're talking to Chandler Rome, who covers the Astros for The Athletic, top of next hour. If you're listening to the pod, it'll be posted as a separate pod. Okay, so Russ, I want to guide you through some social media action that regards the great Adolis Garcia. Okay, so We'll let our director, Gab, just run us through. We've got a variety of tweets to show you. We'll start with this one that Jeff Passan saying the Rangers paying a nominal sum to the Cardinals for the rights to the 26-year-old with 17 big league at bats. And then Derek Gould said that he was DFA'd by the Rangers, don't forget, on February 10th, 2021. So all 29 other teams, including the Cardinals, let him clear waivers. And the Rangers invited him as a non-roster player to camp, which I think is an important clarification because the Cardinals get destroyed for letting Adolis Garcia
My
go.
boy Fultonevich, though.
Yeah, I missed that part. They cleared a spot for him.
Yeah.
For Fulte. And then David O'Brien had a cool little tidbit. I remember when Adolis Garcia hit 2 homers. Adonis Garcia. Adonis hit 2 homers in the first game of a season-ending doubleheader in 2015 as a 30-year-old Braves rookie. He mentioned something about having a kid brother still back in Cuba who was better than him. Adolis was 22 at the time. Adonis wasn't kidding. So it's
I was
a great
on that
story.
team.
Which team?
The 2015 Braves where he hit the 2 home runs.
The famous Braves.
They were awesome. We rocked that year. We lost 100 games.
And there's Adolis Garcia himself. Yeah, you guys were awesome. Really giving it to the world with the shh emojis. It's like how many jelly beans in the jar? How many emojis? If you're just looking there, probably what, 18? Something like that?
No, more than that, like 35.
35?
In the 20s.
You probably got cut off. There's probably some limitation where you'd have to pay Twitter or something like that if you did anymore. And then we'll finish with this. There is Adolis Garcia, live look, just man on fire, walking through life like no big deal. I'm going to hit 5 homers in the freaking ALCS and set all kinds of records and be the ALCS MVP. So how was that, Russ?
No, it's so fun watching that guy swing the bat from games 2 through 7, 10 for 24, hit 417, 5 homers. He's 1 RBI away from tying the record for RBIs in a postseason with at least 4 games left in his season. It's unreal. And the tweets from Passan and Derek Gould about, Adolis Garcia being available to a lot of different teams, including the Cardinals a second time. I think it just goes to show you that guys don't develop at the same rate that some of these blue chip prospects do. Baseball is an interesting game. And sometimes it's the guy that you don't think is going to turn into something that ends up being a star in the big leagues. And Adolis Garcia has really turned into a star when the Rangers have needed him to, because I think you look at that Baltimore series, Corey Seager doing what you expect Corey Seager to do, what you expect a World Series MVP to do. And then, honestly, up until yesterday, we went 3 for 5 with the homer, wasn't really playing all that well. And it was Adolis Garcia that kind of picked his guy up. And you look at the past 3 years in the regular season, Adolis Garcia has been as productive as anybody, right? Over 30 homers 3 straight years, over 100 ribs the last 2 years, and has really been a guy, sure, he's going to strike out a little bit, but is up the walk rate and really turned into a dangerous hitter.
Russ, think about, I know we showed Derek Gould and he's the Cardinals beat writer, but think about who the Cardinals have had that they've let go away. And listen, all teams miss, but I mean, the Cardinals have missed. Rosarena let him walk because of Schilt. Remember when he live streamed the Schilt thing? That was him, right? And then obviously Garcia, Sandy Alcantara, Zach Gallen. I mean, those are just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you can just keep going with guys.
Yeah.
And I know teams trade away guys and they do this and do that, but you have those 4 guys in St. Louis right now. You've got a pretty solid makeup of a team, and you had some Arenados and some Goldschmidts in there, and the Cardinals might not have finished in last place this year.
Teams miss. And I think people like to talk about, oh, well, they didn't fit the Cardinal way, XYZ. Sometimes the way we do things or the way teams do things, or you get into this mindset where now we got to do it our way. Sometimes that doesn't always work. And I think sometimes it might have just not worked out for those guys there, right? Who's to say that if they were with another team, not with the teams they ended up with, that they are as productive as they are now, right? If Adolis Garcia goes somewhere else, maybe he doesn't get to flourish into the guy that the Rangers have seen. He really burst onto the scene on that 102 loss team that they had a couple of years ago when he was going to get all the playing time. They really didn't have anybody who was going to take that spot for him. Evan Carter, it wasn't even in a thought in their mind yet. Josh Young was a guy that was still in the minor league. So he got an opportunity to not only play every day, but develop, take his lumps in the big leagues. Yeah, he was hitting homers, but there were areas of his game where he needed to, kind of round out. And so because of that, he's performing on the biggest stages. He also hit some of the highest home runs you will ever see. Like, that's one of my favorite parts about the game. The different types of home runs you'll see. You'll have your guys like Judge and Jordan hit them 460, 470 feet. Bryce has some of the most aesthetically pleasing home runs you'll see. And then Adolis just hits these just mile-high homers that sometimes just squeak over the edge of the wall. Sometimes they're going 440 feet, but hit to the moon. So he's a talented player. He's a guy that has a lot of energy, a lot of flair. We love him walking to first base on the no doubters, flipping the bat. It's really good for the Rangers, and I think they fed off that energy this postseason.
Walking to first base on singles too, not just on no doubters. Like, hey, you got first base is 90 feet. Whether you walk or you run, it doesn't matter how you get there.
I'm with you, Kratzy.
Hey,
gotta make sure.
Is this a positive? Is this a successful build of a team or a successful rebuild for the Rangers?
I think that's a great question because I think I'm not going to fence ride. I think you can make a case for both. I think this was a successful build of a team.
Thank you.
2 years ago, they lost 102 games. That's not a long time, right? When you're looking at how teams, there have been some teams that have rebuilt for 4, 5, 6 years. You have a team that went from 102 losses and said, yeah, no more. We're going to draft guys like Josh Young, Evan Carter. Those guys are going to impact us in the next 2 years. Then we're going to say, you know what? $685 million we're going to give to 3 guys. $325 for Seager, World Series MVP. We're going to give Marcus Semien, who many consider one of the better leaders in the big leagues, $175 million. Jacob deGrom, $185 million. And he won't even pitch on our team that makes it to the World Series. So I think there has been a combination of spending in the marketplace and free agency, but also being able to draft well and plug holes when they need to, right? They went out at the deadline. They went out and got Max Scherzer, helped them get to this point. Scherzer was hurt. He didn't even, pitch his best game yesterday, but because of the lineup that they had built, right? Being able to trade for guys that you need. You go out and you get Nathaniel Lowe from the Tampa Bay Rays, and he's really flourished in the last couple of seasons into being a really good hitter, right? They built that. That's not something where they're like, all right, we're going to tear it all down and we're going to move. That's not what the Rangers do, right? I think they were kind of looking for how they would get to this point and then kind of scratching your head and you're like, all right, let's try it this way. Like, let's just say, screw it. We're going to spin big. We're going to make some shrewd trades and go from there. And it's gotten them back to the World Series.
I love it. So on the other side, I feel like the Phillies have somewhat of a similar model where they actually rebuilt for longer and didn't bring a ton out of it. But then they spent, and Dombrowski's been wheeling and dealing, and here they are. Not that they're necessarily going to be a World Series ball club again. Your thoughts on Game 7 and also how we got here? Because I think many Philly fans, in my mind, are going to be fuming at Craig Kimbrell if they don't make it. I think they're going to look back, and even though they should win a game, you have 2 games to win at home, or 2 games at home, you need to win 1. I still think if they somehow get upset in this one, they're going to look back and be like, really? You blew 2 games? A closer who could be in the Hall of Fame someday?
I would say that I tweeted last night during the game, actually, that if you're the Phillies, you're looking back at that Game 3 and Game 4, the Craig Kimbrell games that you just mentioned and say, man, if we could have won one of those games, we wouldn't be in this position. And now you're in a Game 7, all bets are off. Arizona's like playing with house money. Nobody expected us to be here anyway. Cool. I have been very impressed with Brandon Pfaadt. The way he pitched earlier in the series, I think he's going to give Arizona his best tonight. And finally, it was what we were talking about the other day, finally Arizona doing what they do best. Be athletic, run the bases, right? I'm still looking for Corbin Carroll to swipe it back here, but they finally played to their strength. And I'm wondering if we see that again tonight, even as they've had success with that in Game 6. So I think the Phillies have to come out, have to play their best game. They got Ranger Suarez on the mound, who has been great in his postseason career, going up against the rookie Brandon Pfaadt and a young lineup, a young team that's kind of just like, screw it. We have nothing to lose. And if you're the Phillies, I think the pressure is on them now at this point to be like, hey, we're in our home ballpark where everybody talks about our home field advantage and how we can't lose at home. And, we have our stars playing like stars. We need one game to get back to the World Series. Can you do that?
Is there any chance anybody else wins NLCS MVP besides Diamondbacks win? It's Marte. Phillies win. It's Schwarber. Is there anybody else that you see coming up and making some type of impact tonight?
If Bryce is the player of Game 7, I would have a hard time believing that somebody else would get it, especially if he homers and it's the game winner. Not necessarily like a walk-off or anything, but if he hits a 3-run shot in the 5th to kind of push the Phillies over the top, I think that would probably be your NLCS MVP, which is ironic seeing as, he sent them to the World Series last year with that homer against the Padres in Game 6. So that's who I would put my money on, just knowing that when the lights are the brightest, since he was 16 years old, that dude shows up. Ultimate showman. And so that's who I would say would probably get my nod.
In my mind, though, Kratz, I think there are 3 legitimate candidates based on how things turn out in Game 7. Bryce, yes. Schwarber, if he has like a 2-homer game or does something crazy. And Zach Wheeler, if he pops up in this game. I think all 3 of those guys have a good chance.